You are not exactly awake. Not entirely asleep, either. The air around you smells like damp moss and old stone, faintly metallic, like a museum basement someone forgot to lock. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays a slow, wandering note, undecided about melody, uninterested in tempo. That's fine. No one's in a rush. A soft breeze moves through the olive trees above you. Their leaves rustle like silk pages, unread and unbothered. You walk along a pale footpath, trodden down by centuries of sandals and goats. The moonlight clings to the stones like dew, and there's a soft crunch of gravel underfoot. Every step feels like it was pre-approved by an ancient committee of shepherds. You are in a forgotten grove, a little hollow tucked into the edge of a world that's not quite mortal and not quite divine. This is where the gods stored their leftovers. The myths that didn't quite catch on. The tales that were too weird, too quiet, too sleepy. And tonight, well, you've stumbled into one. But before we begin, a gentle reminder. You probably won't make it through this day. It's not personal. It's just that everything moves slowly here, and your eyelids are already considering retirement. If you enjoy this kind of half-conscious stroll through myth and dust, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps this little sleepy temple stay lit. And tell us in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You arrive in a time that doesn't have a name, because nobody cared enough to label it. The sun has just slipped beneath the Ionian horizon. The sky is still blushing from the effort. And you're standing in a village with no roads, only intentions. People here don't have addresses. They just say things like, by the crooked fig tree or 2 hills past a whispering goat. This is where we meet her, Epialtheia, the goddess of nightmares. Not the glamorous kind of goddess with golden chariots and entourage of peacocks. No, Epialtheia wears a threadbare tunic, stained at the edges with ink and sleep sweat. She doesn't float or glow. She trudges. She sighs a lot. Epialtheia has one job, and she's not thrilled about it. Each night, she goes from dream to dream, quietly collecting nightmares in a bronze jar, not because she likes them, but because if she doesn't, they pile up. No one else volunteered. The Olympians were too busy arguing about whose toga was whiter. Her jar is heavy tonight. Inside, a dream about teeth falling out in a temple courtyard. Another about being chased by a goat with human eyes. One about showing up to war wearing nothing but a laurel wreath and misplaced confidence. The usual stuff. Nightmares, you learn, were considered by some ancients to be tiny spirits. Honoroi, that slipped into your mind through your ears while you slept. Epialtheia doesn't chase them away. She just gathers the ones that linger too long. She hums to them softly and tucks them into her jar, which glows faintly, like bad wine in moonlight. There's a boy in the village who sees her. His name is Meron, and he hasn't spoken since the last harvest. He's decided not until the gods explain why frogs scream before earthquakes. No one has an answer. Not even Epialtheia. She nods at him as she passes. He nods back, solemn as a heron, in a tunic 2 sizes too big. There's an old woman baking bread at midnight. Why? Because she forgot she already did it earlier. She hums a song older than Athens. One of the lyrics may or may not be about moldy cheese. Scholars still debate whether it's a misheard verse or an ancient culinary joke. You walk past her window. The scent of warm barley and thyme mingles with the sharp tang of ash. Somewhere nearby, a donkey coughs. Not everything in mythology is majestic. Back on the path, Epialtheia stops beneath a crooked fig tree. This is where the worst dreams tend to gather. They hang in the air like wet laundry, damp, tangled, mildly resentful. She opens her jar. The nightmares hesitate. One of them is shaped like a shadow with too many elbows. Another smells faintly of unfinished business and boiled turnips. She whispers something in a language you don't understand, but your bones seem to. The nightmares slip inside the jar, reluctantly. The lid closes with a sigh. So far tonight, she's collected 17 and a half dreams. The half dream was from a man who woke up halfway through a nightmare about an endless toga fitting. It will stew uncomfortably in the jar until someone finishes it. The stars are bright, but a little smug. You can almost hear them thinking, We've been here longer than you. You yawn in their general direction. The path curls toward a grove of sleeping poppies. You follow slowly. There's nowhere else to be. You step into the poppy grove, and the air shifts. It thickens just a little, like it's been steeped in lullabies and lukewarm tea. Every petal seems to breathe. The poppies are not awake, exactly, but they notice you. It's not threatening, just curious, like being quietly judged by a room full of poets. Epialtheia walks ahead of you, her sandals soft against the loamy earth. Her bronze jar glows at her side, pulsing faintly like a disgruntled firefly. She doesn't talk much, but every now and then, she hums to the nightmares, a droning lullaby with no beginning and no point. It helps them settle. Nightmares are high-strung creatures, much like actors or chickens. She pauses to sit on a rock shaped vaguely, like a resigned lion. It's warm from the day's heat, even though night has fully settled in now. You sit beside her. She doesn't mind. You're barely here, after all, just passing through this myth like a whisper in a cave. Long night, she murmurs. You nod. This is the part where we learn something historical. In some obscure corners of ancient Greek belief, nightmares weren't just nuisances. They were messages. Some priests read them like riddles from the gods. Others sold tiny clay amulets to keep the bad ones out. These amulets often depicted eyes, owls, or, bafflingly, hedgehogs. The meaning of the hedgehog, alas, is lost to time. Scholars argue whether it was symbolic of protection or simply adorable. Nearby, a beetle pushes a grain of sand up a hill. It seems proud of itself. You don't interrupt. A low wind stirs the poppies. They sigh in their sleep. You and Epialtheia sit in silence for a while. She's thinking about her jar. It's almost full, but not quite. One more nightmare should do it. She pulls out a thin scroll from her robe. Names written in charcoal. Tonight's scheduled bad dreams. Most of them crossed out. One remains. Anthemon, son of Cephas. Anthemon lives on the far side of the village, by the river where the frogs gossip. His dreams are unusually elaborate. Last week, he dreamt he was a golden fish, arguing with an oracle about tax policy. The week before that, he was stuck inside a giant amphora with his childhood pet tortoise, who had questions about mortality. Epialtheia stands and dusts her robe off. Let's go, she says, before he dreams himself into a sea cucumber again. You walk with her through the poppy grove. Fireflies gather at your ankles like lazy sparks. The moon has shifted slightly, bored of its previous angle. Somewhere, a flute resumes its indecisive tune. It sounds like it's trying to remember how music works. The path leads you past olive press. Remember the old woman baking bread? She used to run this place. Now it's run by her grandson, who believes strongly in the spiritual power of fermented olive brine. He keeps jars of it on a shelf and occasionally whispers compliments to them. No one's brave enough to ask why. As you pass, the air turns cooler. The sound of water joins your steps, gentle, gliding, like a story being poured from a pitcher. The frogs are louder here and slightly more dramatic. One croaks in what sounds like dactylic hexameter. You arrive at Anthemon's house. It leans slightly to the left, like it's trying to hear better. The windows are open. Inside, the boy is already asleep, tangled in his linen sheets, mumbling about custard and naval strategy. Epialtheia kneels by his bedside. She tilts the jar. A faint purple wisp floats out, part fog, part regret. It hovers for a moment, then slips into the jar like it's clocking out from a very strange shift. And there it is. The jar is full. You can tell because it gives a little burp. It's not elegant. But then again, neither is a dream about being hunted by philosophical chickens, which, incidentally, is now inside. Epialtheia replaces the lid and sighs. The weight of the night pulls at her shoulders. Her job is done. For now, you sit with her as she rests her head against the doorframe. Outside, the frogs resume their chorus. The moon softens. And you are barely awake now. Just a breath floating between myths. Tomorrow, there will be more dreams. More names. Another jar. But for tonight, you're safe. Dreamless. Forgotten by the gods, and all the better for it. Let's stay here a little longer. just until the stars blink again. The night is old now. You can feel it in the way the shadows stretch a little thinner, like yawns pulled too far. The stars blink slowly, less like celestial fires and more like tired night watchmen halfway through their shift. Even the frogs have calmed down, trading poetry for soft hiccups of sleep. Epialtheia carries the full jar with both hands now. It hums faintly, like a beehive full of bad dreams. She doesn't have a temple. She doesn't have priests. But she does have a small cave, tucked into the hillside like a forgotten promise. You follow her across the quiet fields, past a vineyard that smells faintly of overripe grapes and theological debate. The vines curl and twist under the weight of their own drama. There's a scarecrow here with one eye and a suspiciously expensive belt. Someone clearly lost a bet. The cave is just ahead. Its entrance is ringed with sleeping moss and chipped votive offerings. Someone once left a bronze comb here, and it's still rusting gently in the dirt. No one touches it. It's sacred now, or cursed. Possibly both. Scholars still debate whether items left at sites like these were devotional gifts or just a really lazy form of recycling. Inside, the cave is cool and dry, smelling faintly of dust and time. There's no torch, just the soft light of the dream jar, illuminating the uneven stone walls. You can see tiny carvings in the rock, circles, eyes, waves, a poorly drawn goat. Possibly symbolic. Possibly someone was just very bored. Epialtheia kneels at a stone shelf and sets the jar down. She places a flat pebble on top as a lid weight. Then she whispers the names of each nightmare. One by one, not to honor them, but to remember who they came from. She never forgets the sleepers. Tonight's include a mason haunted by the sound of cracking marble, a girl who dreamed she was swallowed by the moon, a fisherman chased by a talking eel with opinions on furniture. When she finishes, she taps the jar twice. That's her ritual. Nothing fancy. No thunder, no transformation. Just a gentle tap. The jar stops glowing. Outside, an owl hoots once, like a punctuation mark. You sit on a flat stone nearby. There's a small pool at the center of the cave floor, filled with water, so still it forgets it exists. Epialtheia looks into it every night. She doesn't say why. Some think she's waiting for a reflection. Others think she's just procrastinating. This is your moment to breathe, in this half-forgotten place. You are surrounded by sleep, not just yours, but the kind that lingers in corners of the world where no one's looking. And here's your historical fact of the night. The ancient Greeks believed certain caves were entrances to the underworld, but not all entrances were dramatic. So just like this, quiet, mossy, a bit damp. If you walked far enough inside, they said, you'd find dreams hanging from the ceiling like bats, which raises many questions. But answers are for people who aren't falling asleep. You notice something glinting near your foot. A small coin, worn, thin, barely legible. Someone left it here long ago, maybe as an offering to Epialtheia. Or maybe just hoping it would keep the nightmares from finding their way home. Superstition and commerce often sleep in the same bed. Epialtheia stands again. She doesn't stretch. Her limbs are too old for that kind of luxury. You ask her, softly, why she does this, why she carries these dreams. She smiles, but it's not the pleasant kind. It's the kind that understands things you don't want to. Because if I don't, they start leaking into daylight, she says. And daylight is already confused enough. Fair. You hear the jar behind you shift slightly. One of the dreams is still fidgeting. Probably the one about the eel. Let it settle. Everything does. Eventually, the cave exhales around you, and you drift, slowly, into that heavy space between memory and myth. Again, you wake up, if that's even the right term, with the sensation that the cave is dreaming you now. The air feels thicker, weighted by old stories and too many unsaid things. Somewhere nearby, water drips in a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like ancient sarcasm. Epialtheia is already gone. She moves like a breeze through myth, rarely asking permission. You step out of the cave and into the earliest edge of dawn. The sky isn't blue yet. It's that strange, in-between shade, like watered-down wine or the bruise on an apricot. Not unpleasant, just vaguely apologetic. You walk down the hill past a flock of sheep that are either still asleep or deeply unmotivated. One of them stares at you with the judgment of a philosopher. You apologize. It blinks. The village is barely stirring. Smoke curls from a chimney. Someone sneezes. A chicken makes a sound that might be existential doubt, or just indigestion. You return to the narrow path by the crooked fig tree, the same one where nightmares like to loiter. But now it's empty, except for a cat. The cat stares at the spot where Epialtheia stood last night. Then at you, then back at the spot. Cats are very into narrative continuity. Today is different. There's someone waiting at the well. He's older than the hills, quite literally. His name is Frescoes, and he claims to have invented rain. No one believes him, but he's been grandfathered into local legend, mostly out of politeness. He offers you a figure. It's a little too warm. You accept it anyway. Social norms, even here. Frescoes is muttering to himself about a dream he had. Something about flying sandals and angry asparagus. He insists it means war is coming. You nod solemnly. It probably just means he ate the wrong kind of mushrooms. Again. But here's the weird cultural tidbit of the morning. Some villagers in remote parts of the Greek world believe dreams could be transferred between people using certain herbs, thyme, fennel, crushed laurel. There are even records of communal dreaming rituals, where people would sleep in the same room, hoping to share a vision. Whether this worked or just led to synchronized snoring, no one knows for sure. Frescoes offers you another figure. This one is slightly colder. Progress. From up the hill, you spot Epialtheia again. She's walking with a younger girl, barefoot, hair wild, eyes half closed. The girl is holding something in her hand, a ribbon frayed at one end. It's one of the threads that guided a dream back to its owner. Found her sleepwalking, Epialtheia says. Told me she was looking for her lost thought. Said it fell out during a thunderstorm. You ask if that's normal. Epialtheia raises an eyebrow. What part of any of this seems normal to you? Touché. The girl's name is Eleni. She'll remember none of this. In the morning, she'll wake up with time in her hair and a faint ache behind her eyes. She'll think she dreamt of stars being arranged alphabetically. And she kinda did. Epialtheia walks her home. You follow. The streets are beginning to smell like breakfast, barley cakes, early honey, something suspiciously minty. A few villagers nod at Epialtheia as she passes. Most pretend not to see her. It's easier that way. Who wants to be reminded their dreams are being quietly harvested? As she walks, Epialtheia plucks a small flower from the roadside. It's a kind of wild narcissus. She tucks it behind Eleni's ear. Helps keep the bad dreams out, she says. Probably. The probably does a lot of heavy lifting. Once Eleni is safely home, Epialtheia sits down beside the old bakery. The bread lady is asleep on her stool again, clutching a rolling pin like a sacred artifact. She snores in verse. Epialtheia leans back against the warm stone wall. She closes her eyes. And for the first time, you wonder, does she dream? The answer is slow in coming. But you think maybe, just maybe, she used to. Somewhere a rooster crows. It's not good at it. That feels appropriate. You stay there a while longer, in the soft pocket of a morning that hasn't decided who it wants to be yet. No one needs you anywhere else. Not yet. Not for a while. You find yourself walking again, because that's what people do in stories like these. They walk, they pause, they ponder. Occasionally they talk to goats. But mostly they walk. The sun is climbing now, slowly, as if it also stayed up too late with strange dreams and lukewarm fig wine. The path curves past the temple ruins, or what's left of them. 3 Doric columns still stand, leaning slightly toward each other like old friends sharing gossip. The rest have collapsed with dignity, forming polite piles of antiquity. This temple wasn't dedicated to Zeus or Athena or anyone marketable. It belonged to Morphomenos, a minor dream spirit whose only claim to fame was inspiring mediocre poetry. His statue used to stand right here, small, sleepy-eyed, holding a pillow shaped like a fish. Now it's just a weathered foot and a hint of ankle. Artistic priorities have changed. You brush past a bush of wild oregano. It smells like lunch and unresolved family tension. A bee circles your head once, then moves on. You are deemed uninteresting. That's a compliment here. At the edge of the ruins, Epialtheia appears again. She's holding a scroll, yellowed and frayed. It's a list, you think, or maybe a letter. Hard to tell with ancient handwriting. She reads it aloud without looking at you. To whoever finds this, please don't open the jar before the solstice. It leaks. You ask if that's her handwriting. She shrugs. Might be my sister's. Wait, she has a sister? Yes. Epialtheia says, answering your question before you voice it. Two, actually. One collects pleasant dreams. The other one causes accidental dreams. You know, the kind you wake up from and say, why was I eating soup and a cherry with my third-grade teacher? You try to imagine a family dinner. It's mostly quiet, with a lot of sighing and passive-aggressive hummus. Historical sidebar, without making it sound like one. Ancient Greek myth was filled with minor deities and spirits assigned to incredibly specific tasks. There was a god for rust, a spirit of dizziness, and even a demon who governed the feeling of missing something you never really had. These were called daimons, and they populated the world like background characters in a dream you didn't fully understand. Epialtheia's family, you gather, was never top billing. They didn't crash weddings or start wars. They just helped people forget what they were afraid of, or help them remember. Depending on the day, a breeze kicks up and a piece of scroll peels away and floats off. You let it go. Paper always knows where it wants to end up. Epialtheia walks into the temple's broken center, where the altar used to be. She kneels and presses her hand against a slab of marble that hasn't been touched in centuries. A soft glow blooms beneath her palm. Not dramatic, just enough to suggest that something once lived here, and maybe still does, in the way moss remembers rainfall. You sit beside her. Want to know a secret? She asks. You nod, obviously. She leans close, almost whispering. Some dreams come back after you've trapped them. Years later. Changed. Wearing different shoes. You blink. It's why I never throw the jars away. She stands, brushing the dust from her tunic. Let's go see where I keep them. The ruins watch you leave. One of the columns creaks, just slightly. You don't look back. The place where she keeps the jars is not on any map. It's not even on purpose. It's just there, a hollow beneath the roots of an olive tree older than most deities. It leans at a suspicious angle, as if it's heard too many secrets and doesn't want to hear more. You duck beneath the branches, past a curtain of lichen that smells like cold mornings and herbal regret. Inside, there's a sunken room carved directly into the earth. Cool, quiet, jar-lined. There are dozens of them, maybe hundreds, each one glowing faintly with the color of a dream. Some flicker like candlelight, some throb like distant thunder. A few are completely dark, and those, well, you don't ask. Epialtheia picks up one jar at random. It rattles softly. This one, she says, is a recurring nightmare from a playwright who feared his audience would turn into ducks mid-performance. You laugh. She doesn't. That happened to me once, she adds. At Delphi. A pause. Metaphorically, she concedes. Each jar is marked with a simple glyph, a swirl, a jagged line, a shape that looks suspiciously like a potato. It's not a classification system that modern academia would admire, but it works for her. Here's your major historical moment. Dreams in ancient Greece weren't just nighttime oddities. They were state business. In sanctuaries like those at Epidaurus, people would sleep in special chambers, hoping for a dream sent by the gods. They'd wake up, describe it to a priest, and receive a prescription, sometimes herbs, sometimes ritual, sometimes just a very pointed suggestion to eat fewer onions before bed. Epialtheia walks past one particularly dusty jar. See that one? That's mine. You raise an eyebrow. She gives you a look. Even gods have bad nights. You want to ask what the dream was, but something tells you not to. Instead, you notice a jar on the far shelf that's glowing blue. Really blue, like melted sapphire and moon milk. She sees you looking. Ah, that one escaped once. You step back, just a little. It was a boy's dream, she continues. about being trapped inside the sky, not under it, inside it. He couldn't breathe because the clouds were too loud. There's a long pause. She picks up a different jar. This one is soft pink and hums like a lullaby. Palate cleanser, she says, placing in your hands. You don't open it, of course. That would be terribly rude. But for a moment, your fingertips feel like they remember a dream you never had. Something about baking bread with someone you miss. There's an old stool in the corner of the room. You sit. You exhale. You listen. Somewhere behind the jars, something creaks. Probably the tree roots. Probably. You ask her if anyone else ever comes here. Only the ones who know how to forget properly, she says. It's a rare skill. You believe her. One of the darker jars rattles again. You decide that's your cue to leave. As you crawl back out to the olive roots, the light seems gentler, the sky more curious. The world has not changed, but you might have, just a little, back on the path. Epialtheia is already walking. You follow, of course.